Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, September 24th, and today we're talking about, as you can see on the screen, ancient Athens. Just to kind of recap, we started Greece on Monday of this week, and we talked about its geography and how that, of course, it affects its history and how it operated. And we also talked about its dark ages, which again, weren't dark due to them, is because we just don't really know what they were doing. I talked about the first Greek city-state, Mycenae, in the Iliad, and a little bit of the Odyssey that was written by Homer, and then got into talking about, the rise of the city-states, and specifically on Tuesday, Sparta, and all of their glory, especially when it comes to training militarily and for war and such. And then yesterday was, again, a work day for the social studies department. And of course, I offered you guys extra credit yesterday and put a video out there called Real Talk and Reminders. I asked that all students watch it, again, not just online learners, but in-person learners as well, due to, of course, the amount of emails I'm getting about grades. It's a conversation, that hopefully, or it's a video that will hopefully clear up some misconceptions or some questions that you may have about expectation. So I suggest you go in and watch that. But today is about Athens. So, of course, Athens very famously gave us democracy, as a world, and so that's definitely its most lasting legacy. But it didn't start out a democracy. It kind of, evolves into one. So originally, actually, Athens was ruled by a king, as you can see, and then later becomes an oligarchy. And even after it becomes an oligarchy, however, it transitions into some tyranny. So, I mean, you've got several different types of governments going on. You've got monarchy, oligarchy, tyranny, and then eventually you end up with democracy. So, I mean, like I said, it's got an evolutionary process there to get it to democracy. One of the politicians that comes in is Draco, and he comes in and codifies the law, but also makes punishment very harsh. And of course, you should be able to know who, that mindset comes from, and why people would feel the need to codify law with harsh punishment, and why they believed that would work. And that goes back to, of course, Babylon and the Code of Hammurabi. But the harshness of the punishments under Draco and then his successors over time became a little much. And so when Solon comes to power, he wants to kind of reform and get rid of the amount of tyranny and issues that the real harsh punishment has created within Athens. And then by the time of Clisthenes is actually a politician completely backed by the Athenian people, because he is kind of the mastermind of the foundational piece of democracy in Athens. He creates this Council of 500 and starts to say, hey, we need to assemble, and this council needs to, everyone needs to talk it over, and everyone should kind of vote on laws and how the laws are administered and how people who break the law are punished. And it shouldn't just be one man. His viewpoint was, of course, two heads are better than one, three heads are better than two, hey, 500 are better than 499. And it kind of just grows from there. And again, creates that foundational piece for Athens and democracy. So we're going to kind of switch right quick to, how did Athens become so powerful? How did it become, the most influential city-state in ancient Greece? Well, if you remember from the first of the week, I told you guys, the city states did not get along. I mean, like they didn't like each other. They actually fought each other a good bit. But when it came to the Persians, they were willing to set aside their differences and fight the Persians together. It was kind of like, hey, we may not get along, but if there's one thing we agree on, it's the fact that we hate Persia, so we'll come together on that. Um, and there were two kind of big invasions of Greece by the Persians, or I should say, invasion attempts by the Persians. The first is with King Darius, and he comes in, but is defeated, and he's really defeated again by the city states all working together, but definitely the Athenian navy. The Athenian navy actually ends up being this really incredible force to be reckoned with in the ancient world. And the Battle of Marathon is actually going to give Athens its kind of first big like military boost of confidence. Like, oh my gosh, we really are pretty good at this and can defeat our enemies. So those of you that I actually saw in quite a few of your bell ringer answers, like where does marathons come from? Why do we call them marathons? And this is something I teach in class. This is kind of neat. The Battle of Marathon was actually fought just south of the city of Marathon. And once the Greeks realized that the Persians were retreating and that they were actually going to win, a message was sent via a messenger into the city to tell the city officials, hey, the Athenians have won, prepare for them to come back into the city. And they told the messenger, you run as fast as you can, you get there as fast as you can so that it can be proclaimed. And so, of course, celebration can begin. And he ran as fast as he could, and the distance between the battlefield and when he reached the elders of the city was 26.2 miles, which is why a marathon is 26.2 miles. Now, tragically, the messenger, as soon as he delivered the message, dropped dead. So that is the kind of the history behind why a marathon is called a marathon and why it's 26.2 miles. Now, once Darius is defeated again in this first round of Persian attempted invasion, his son Xerxes is going to come to the throne and vow to avenge the loss. So Xerxes comes in and begins to invade the Greek city-states as well. And they in Athens and Sparta and some of the other city-states again all come together because they're like, hey, yeah, we may hate each other, but we hate the Persians more. And this, of course, is where very famously the 300 Spartans will die at the Battle of Thermopylae, led by King Leonidas I of Sparta. So what happens is they face off and understand they knew like this is not going to go well for us. I mean, they knew they were going to die, and they lure the Persian army into a narrow passageway, a narrow, high cliffed, rocked passageway right off of the coast. And it's these 300 Spartan soldiers going up against 7,000 Persian soldiers. And so, again, like the odds are highly stacked against them, even though, yes, they're Spartans. But for 3 days, this is what is so incredible. For 3 days, these 300 Spartan soldiers, really do a number on the Persian military and the Persian army and keep them blocked off so that Athens and the other city states can prepare better and be ready for the Persians. And the big blow to Xerxes comes at the Battle of Salamis, which was when the Athenian navy really dominate, and Xerxes is made to go back to Persia. And this is when Athens is truly like catapulted to its what will become its golden age. So after the defeat of the Persians and Xerxes, Athens very much kind of takes over the leadership role of the peninsula and of all of the city states. The Delion League is formed with, again, Athens controlling it. And there's a little bit of a financial history here as to why you end up having the Peloponnesian War, which is what we're talking about tomorrow, and it revolves around the Delion League. It's yes, they formed this defensive alliance with Athens controlling the league and it being like the go-to city state, but money is funneling into Athens due to their leadership role of the Delion League. And the money that is being sent to Athens from the other city states is supposed to be being spent on like military installation and military training and creating a larger navy based out of Athens. It's defense spending is what is supposed to be taking place with this money. And after a while, when the Persian threat doesn't seem like it's going to come back, it doesn't seem as strong, that money continues to funnel in, but Athens doesn't use it for defense spending. They begin using it to catapult Athens and start, using it for their own prosperity, which of course leads to war, with Sparta, because Sparta gets enough of it and they're like, hey, that's not what you're supposed to be using this money for, and that's not how you're supposed to be handling the leadership of the Delion League. But the age of Pericles is definitely known as the golden age of Athens. It's from 461 to 429 BC, and you see not only its prosperity but its philosophers, its just standard of living in general, its wealth, and yes, like it's also its exercise of democracy, just again at its height. This is when Athens personifies, the city on the hill that everyone thinks of when they think of ancient Athens. The assembly would meet every 10 days. And I would totally take my time machine back to this era, because I would love to see direct democracy happening. You would have sometimes up to 20 to 30,000 men up at the Acropolis in Athens, standing around the buildings, truly participating in the government. Like, I'm talking directly participating as citizens every 10 days in the government. I mean, on a regular, at least 10,000 men were showing up every 10 days, at least. Like, that was like kind of like a slow day if 10,000 men showed up to be at the assembly and talk about like Athenian politics and law and issues. And so just to see that type of like civic responsibility and like direct civic duty taking place would be really, really cool. So that's definitely something that I would take a time machine back and check out. So we sit here and we talk about Athens and how progressive it was. And again, some of the greatest philosophical minds of the ancient world are from Athens: Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, in a lot of ways, Pericles, and so you would think with this progressive and intelligent of a society, that the women would be treated with that type of progression. And this is what is so crazy and hard for me as a female to understand, is that the women were so suppressed in Athens. So if you'll remember talking about Sparta, Spartan women had tons of respect and freedoms, and they were educated and they could read and write and they exercised and all of that. They could own property. And I mean, like, all of this incredible stuff for Spartan women were available. For Athenian women, zilch. I'm talking like nothing. They couldn't do hardly anything. If you were a wealthy Athenian woman, you could barely get out of your house. I mean, the only reason why you could really go anywhere and you had to be chaperoned was if you were going to a funeral if you were going and like seeing other women at their homes. And again, like if you're rich, you don't really have to go shopping or anything because you have slaves that go and do that. I mean, you basically just sat at home and you were expected to sit there and run the house and have babies, and that's pretty much it. Women were not respected. They were not considered citizens. A male child was ranked higher than an adult female in Athens. Like a male child could essentially boss around and dictate to his mother, because they were held in higher esteem. Of course, so therefore don't even think or dream they could own property, or they weren't educated. They weren't allowed to learn how to even read and write. And so it's just, it always, again, has surprised me kind of how progressive and amazing Athens was as a civilization, but yet they treated their women so backwards. So this is actually a really funny video. I challenge you guys at home to watch it. It's a parody about a wife swap between an Athenian woman and a Spartan woman. And so most of the students today are getting a pretty good kick out of that in class. And this is just the pyramid to show you what the social hierarchy looked like in ancient Athens. I know it says life, society, and culture in ancient Greece, but it's Athens is what this is. And of course, the only people that were citizens were native Athenian men. Those were the people that I'm talking about who were participating in the direct democracy of Athens. And then, like I just said, male children are even above women, and women are lumped in with foreigners, and female children and just above slaves. So, again, kind of very, very progressive in some areas and then not so much in others. And then this video is a really great video about just kind of like what was life like in general in Athens. The guy that narrates it is Greek, and he does have a pretty thick accent. So I have the closed captioning turned on, but if for whatever reason at home when you pull it up and it's not there, you may want to click on the CC there on the bottom right of the screen so that you can kind of read along in case you struggle sometimes with understanding what he's saying. And that is it for today for Athens. I hope you guys are having a good Thursday. And tomorrow, Friday, September 25th, we will be talking about Sparta and Athens finally, going head to head and duking it out in the Peloponnesian War. You will also have a formative assessment tomorrow over Sparta and Athens. And of course, you will need to take that tomorrow, the day that I give it. So just kind of a word of warning about that as well. And see you guys then. Bye-bye.